Hello and welcome in.
Please do not leave your luggage unattended on the station.
Welcome to the show.
Yo, welcome to the show. I'm not Liv, no, but Liv is here. There she is. She's at home. How you doing, Liv?
I'm doing fabulous. I'm so excited to be here with you guys on a Wednesday. Happy
We're
hump
fabulous.
day, fellas.
Yeah, we're fabulous. It's a little weird sitting in your chair, though. I'm gonna be honest. It's not. I don't belong here. I belong over there
Yes,
where
you
BK
do.
is. Okay, well, I'm gonna do my best, and so
I mean,
welcome in.
we can switch chairs.
No, I don't want to
Okay.
switch. No, that's not what I mean.
No, okay.
That's not what I mean.
I get
know
it.
what I mean?
I get it. I get it.
So welcome to the show, Off Field on a Wednesday special edition. Typically, we're doing these Mondays to Fridays, and now we're here Wednesday. And so BK to my right, Liv at home, and we're going to get into the Broncos and Chargers. And the Broncos are 3-2, and they're meeting the Chargers, who are 2-2, coming off a bye. Are the Chargers really any good? What's this opponent going to look like? Broncos on a 3-game winning streak, and they're going to play again at home against the Chargers at Empower Field on Sunday. But before we get into that, I think I just want to dive into some drama that's happening in the NFL right now. Robert Saleh, New York Jets head coach, fired yesterday and apparently escorted out by security, and a crazy sort of timeline and drama around this. Now, we're familiar with the Nathaniel Hackett drama and what he brings to a team. So, BK, if you could break down what's going on in New York, that would be great.
So as you can imagine, there's lots of people weighing in on this, including Aaron Rodgers, and you just we're watching a little
He
bit.
was on Pat McAfee.
Yeah,
Doing his Wednesday Pat McAfee
yeah,
hit.
a little bit of him explaining his role in all this, and that he talked to Woody Johnson. But and again, this is sort of piecing together everyone's reports, right? No one's written like a definitive timeline, although I bet Albert Breer actually probably will in the MMQB, because that's really where he's good at putting all the pieces. But essentially, Woody Johnson, and if you believe people in the know, after spending a couple of years, and he wants people, I guess, to call him Ambassador Johnson, because he was
is that right?
He was an ambassador, but he was the ambassador of the UK.
Ambassador
He had lots of
Johnson.
friends there from his ambassador days.
Oh,
He was extra embarrassed, not just by his team losing, but losing in front of his fancy friends.
Oh.
So Robert Saleh was hired by his brother during a time when he was still finishing up his ambassadorship. So there's no loyalty there. There is obviously an excitement and a loyalty around Aaron Rodgers from Woody Johnson. They reworked the deal. He's got him pretty much as long as Rodgers wants to play, he'll be a Jet. Rodgers, we know, is tied to Nathaniel Hackett. Well, with things not working on offense, Robert Saleh in the team meeting on Tuesday, or coaches meeting, says we're going to go a different direction and have Todd Downing call plays. I'm guessing he at least talked to Todd, probably to Hackett too, but lets everybody know. Minutes after that, he's back in his office, and Woody Johnson comes in without telling Joe Douglas, the GM, and lets Robert Saleh know that he's fired. The piece about the security, the same thing did not happen with Nathaniel Hackett, but as it's been explained to one of the reporters up there, security just walked out with him. They didn't forcibly remove him. They let him take his time. It wasn't, hey, we got to go. And I guess they probably took his key card or whatever. And it may not even have a key card, maybe a code, but they just walked him to his car. It wasn't, hey, but he didn't get to address the team. And now they named Jeff Ulbrich. Who's a D coordinator.
He's the interim head coach.
As now the interim head coach. Hackett was an option. There's probably some other options if we were to go down their staff, but
Hackett.
I mean, he has experience. And so really a mess. The Jets know how to get in the way of even when you think there's something good, they can get in their own way. I actually heard a great joke from Artie Lang, who used to be on Howard Stern's show.
Yeah.
And he said he became a Jets fan, and he asked his dad why he's a Jets fan. He goes, look, I fell in love with the Jets, and then I found girls, and then I found my way back to the Jets, because there's sometimes where girls don't want to screw you, but the Jets will always screw you. And I'm paraphrasing, so I don't want to drop F-bombs.
Wow. So safe to say that Ambassador Johnson, based on the Jets' performance, is losing his Woody.
That is safe to. Is that safe to say, Liv?
I think so. Or his boner.
Yeah, he wishes he had a boner.
Yeah,
they got Aaron Rodgers over there, and Aaron Rodgers seems to be like
not A-Rod, a fraud.
A fraud.
Yeah. Okay. Honestly, here's my problem with it all. I've talked a little bit about my frustrations with Aaron Rodgers. I think he's a diva. He drives me nuts in a lot of ways, but I just feel like it's Aaron Rodgers' way or the highway. We've seen this happen before. Like when Aaron Rodgers wants something done, he just has to snap his fingers and it gets done. And to me, I don't know if I'm not saying that Saleh is the best coach and he is the person for this job and he can make this Jets team successful, but I also don't think he's working alone in this team not working. We talked about Aaron Rodgers losing some of his sparkle and his shine. And I will say that back in 2023, when Zach Wilson was the starting quarterback and they started a similar 2-3 through those first 5 games, he scored or led his offense to score 93 points. And Aaron Rodgers, in his first 5 games with a 2-3 record, also led this offense to 93 points. So we're not even seeing Aaron Rodgers playing much better than Zach Wilson did in the first 5 games of the 2023 season. So I don't know. I think Aaron Rodgers just needs to take a little bit of accountability. He doesn't do that in post-game pressers. I just don't know if firing the head coach is necessarily going to fix the problems that they have. I think Aaron Rodgers is part of the issue.
Yeah, he definitely threw his coach under the bus a couple weeks ago. Actually, it was against the Broncos,
Yeah,
right?
The Broncos.
They had all those issues, 5 false starts or something like that. And Coach, Saleh was asked about it. And he said, maybe we need to not do so much tricky cadence, right? And because Aaron Rodgers was doing all the tricky stuff. And Aaron Rodgers said, yeah, that's one way to deal with it. Or we could hold him accountable. He doesn't talk like that, but
it's worth noting on that. And I want to talk about Saleh for a second, but on that, leading into the game when Sean Payton was asked about Aaron Rodgers, he's like, he's the best quarterback ever at getting people to jump. So his cadence works. The argument to be made is you went to training camp a year ago and whatever offseason he was a part of a year ago. You tear your Achilles week 1, 0 practice, 0 games. You weren't there every single day of OTAs and minicamp. Famously, he missed mandatory minicamp because he was in Egypt.
But Brandon, to be fair, he was really sad when he was rehabbing and he wanted something to be excited about. So he planned a trip to Egypt because he always wanted to see the pyramids.
That's the only time that it was available.
Right.
The only time the pyramids, they were.
Come on, man.
You can only see the pyramids during mandatory OTAs, not the 6 weeks in between the start of training camp, the end of mini camp. But so the cadence, which is something that obviously he's going to continue to work on with his team, is going to be developed over time, right? When he's been in Green Bay all those years, pieces come and go, but there's enough consistency. This is new to everybody. Okay, that's its own thing, and they're going to have to work that out for as long as he's the quarterback because that's not going to change. And it's going to, more times not, work to his advantage getting people to jump off, but you don't have to be your own guys. Saleh, after year 1 or 2, had to fire Mike LaFleur as the offensive coordinator. I understand it wasn't working with Zach Wilson, but Saleh has known Mike LaFleur most of Mike's entire life. Mike is the younger brother of Matt LaFleur. They were both grad assistants at Central Michigan, which is where I think Matt played, but they're at least from whatever town Central Michigan's in.
Michigan boys.
And so Saleh would stay at their parents' house for holidays and would go. So he has known Mike LaFleur pretty much since Mike was a teenager or early in college, whatever that age is, in his late teens, early 20s. And he still fired him. He then hires Hackett and was ready to demote him. Some of it's on Saleh. He's the defensive guy. I get that. He's going to focus more on that side of the ball, but you are the coach of the whole team. Yep. He's already gotten it wrong. He gets it wrong again. And that, I think, factors in that he can't find the right guy. What's more interesting beyond just this interim part is where do you go next? Because you look, coaches typically, or ownership groups will go, oh, we had a defensive-minded coach. Now we're going to get a young offensive play caller or an older offensive play caller. Then we're going to switch back to, oh, we need a defensive guy. If you look, there's a renaissance. D'Amico Ryans, Dan Quinn. We could go through some of these other coaches that are having success. Sean McDermott's obviously having success.
Yeah, but you also have those on the offensive side as well.
Sure, I'm just saying I
wouldn't say it's a renaissance.
No, but there was a stretch where can we find all the McVay and Shanahan disciples? And they did.
Well, that did happen last year.
No, well, and it happened a couple years, but Matt LaFleur, Zach Taylor, right? I'm just saying it ebbs and flows, but you typically aren't going to follow Robert Saleh with a Dan Quinn type or a Vance Joseph. Like Vance Joseph probably isn't getting the Jets job, even if you were to be in this head coaching cycle. And he may not get Arizona or Vegas because they may want to go offensive.
Hopefully VJ ain't going nowhere.
Yeah, with the way he's calling defense. But I'm just saying, if I'm the
anywhere.
Jets, you're not hiring Mike McCarthy when the Cowboys fire him because that already didn't work. Okay. You're not going to go hire Luke Getsy, the quarterback's coach, who was a bad OC in Chicago, and now he's the OC in Vegas. You're not going to hire.
Let's not go through the whole coaching.
No, but I'm saying there's not that many Rodgers coaches that he can go get.
Right.
So if you're going to have Rodgers around, you're going to have to find
somebody.
It's going
to be Hackett. Hackett's going to get a second shot at this thing if he could turn it around. Right. Okay. So I knew that Robert Saleh fucked up when he hired Nathaniel Hackett as his OC. That's, to me, he's a brilliant defensive mind. He's done really great things with his defense, but he just trusted the wrong offensive guys since he's been there. Right. I mean, but you wonder how much. Okay, so Woody, does Ambassador Johnson, is he involved in these hires?
I think he is going forward, especially because his brother
was he involved in Nathaniel Hackett being hired by Saleh, or did Saleh believe in Hackett? Because Hackett was a monumental failure here. It was actually pretty bad how things went. For him to get the nod to be the OC in New York was surprising to me.
This is where and Liv, I want you to chime in here too, but this is where the relationship with Matt LaFleur has to come into play. Yeah, you fired his little brother, but Sean McVay hired Mike LaFleur right away. So I imagine some of that was already going to be taken care of. But Saleh has to reach out to his best friend in coaching in Matt LaFleur and say, explain to me the dynamic with Aaron and Nathaniel. Is it related to how things were when he won 2 MVPs there with you? Is my timeline right on that? Did he win the 2 with
Hackett?
With Hackett, at least one of them.
Yeah,
at least one of them. And he won
2020.
Yeah, so
the COVID year.
Yeah, and so when you look at it, say,
Or
okay,
was he back-to-back MVP?
He was back-to-back MVPs.
Probably both with Hackett.
Okay, so Hackett was at least there for one, if not both. But how did that work? How did it go? How did it play out? And day to day. And can Nathaniel come in? Aaron's going to end up going through the game plan. That is it mostly Aaron and Hackett's just there to hold his hand.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting.
But I'm saying, so Saleh didn't just do this like, oh, that's his guy. There had to be some due diligence, and Matt LaFleur at least signed off on their dynamic. And I'm sure Aaron was saying, hey, give me my guy. It's going to be smooth. Let's go.
It's not anything but smooth. Liv, do you think they fired the wrong guy? How do you think things are going there? Do you think Saleh just wasn't the right guy for the job?
I mean, yeah, I think that there's probably elements of it where he wasn't the right fit. I do think, like you said, he's very defensive minded, but that's not the part of the Jets team right now that is necessarily struggling the most. It is the offense, but it does make me wonder. Like, I know BK's saying that they did their due diligence and it wasn't just, hey, this is Rodgers' guy, let's bring Hackett along. But that's kind of how it feels. Like we've saw this story kind of start to unfold with the Broncos when we thought we were going to get Aaron Rodgers and then Hackett was here. Like, I think that Rodgers really does want to be alongside Hackett for whatever reason. I don't know. Maybe it's because he's able to do whatever he wants. And he knows that he kind of is the coach in that relationship because Hackett can't coach. And so maybe that's what it is. And he just feels comfortable in that way. And I don't know, they kind of feel like this like pair that can't be separated, but yeah, I would just love to know behind closed doors, how much power does Rodgers really have in terms of what he wants for the teams that he plays for?
A lot.
Yeah, well, Rodgers was on Pat McAfee this morning, and he was talking about that he actually had a conversation with Woody Monday night. Woody called him to ask how he was doing and if he was okay and just shoot the shit. And he didn't mention he was about to fire Robert Saleh. Yeah, right. You know what I mean? Like, of course, he probably mentioned it to him. Of course, Aaron knew it was coming before it happened, I would imagine.
I'm just going through a Google search because I'm curious what the NFL world thinks who's going to be on that short list as of today.
Yeah.
But when you Google candidates to replace, the first fill-in is Biden, and then second is Robert Saleh. So it's at least still front of mind. It feels like candidates to replace Biden.
Wait, Joe Biden might be the head coach of the Jets.
So you have Jeff
That would be
Ulbrich.
fun.
Look, here's the one thing that we're not taking into account.
Get him!
We're just
Get him!
we're assuming,
Tackle him!
and this is where
Get him!
like we're punting, coach, or it's we're receiving the kick. What are you talking about?
Kick hell out of him!
But with
Oh my gosh.
with the Rooney Rule, it gets tricky because if Jeff Ulbrich does a great job, then you can say, no, we just want to promote him now. It does help that they had a minority head coach, but they still have to go through the process. You can't just, I don't know the rules there. That's where it gets gray, but the Fritz Pollard Alliance will have an issue and the coaching association will at least look at it. But your other names, Bill Belichick. If I'm Bill Belichick, I don't know if I want any part of Aaron Rodgers.
No.
Mike Vrabel, Brian Flores, who's obviously doing a really good job with Minnesota's defense.
So a bunch of defense.
Ben Johnson in the offensive coordinator in Detroit, who turned down some opportunities. Bobby Slowick, the play caller in Houston. Aaron Glenn, who played for the Jets for a long time, who's had a couple of head coaching job interviews, including here. He is the D coordinator in Detroit. That unit's not great. I don't know how much of that is on Aaron Glenn and how much has been the personnel he's had. He's got a terrible secondary, but those are some of the early names. Joe Brady as well, who's I think Colin plays in Buffalo now.
Or maybe Deion Sanders.
Coach Prime and Shador?
Yeah. Because Aaron Rodgers, if he keeps playing like this, he ain't going to play next year. He'll retire.
Does he
No, he'll do that. Yeah, he'll do that bullshit thing he always does where he's like, I don't know if I'm going to be here next year. And he wants everyone to sit and beg him, Rodgers, we can't play without you. The league would be nothing without. Nope. Bye. Pack your bags.
You would think that he learned from Brett Favre that like that sucks to hold your team hostage for multiple years.
Liv, do you think that's affecting his legacy at all with the way he's kind of going out and turning into this little turd burglar these last couple of years?
I mean, yeah, like I do. That was kind of what I was implying. I flash back to one of the shows that we had where it's very different because Travis Kelce is still playing very well. But in my brain, as you get older in this league, let's now switch that over to Rodgers. It's like you've done really great things for this league. You have been that guy. You have the accolades. People know how good you can be. So when you start to like feel your age, and again, the game starts to pass you, like we've talked about a million times, like just pack it up. What is he trying to prove at this point? I don't think the Jets are in any position to win a Super Bowl anytime soon. They don't have what it takes based on what I've seen in this 2 and 3 start so far. But so to me, it's like, just pack it up. You've done what you needed to do.
Yeah.
You're great. You've got the accolades. Everybody knows you are one of the best that has played this game. Like, just go to Egypt, go do your retreats, go be a podcaster with Pat McAfee, do all those things. But it just feels like he's trying to force the football thing right now. And it feels like the game has passed Aaron Rodgers. That's how it feels.
We'll have an even better sense of Aaron Rodgers' influence and his commitment to wanting to stay around if he can convince Joe Douglas / Ambassador Johnson to make the trade for Devontae Adams and pony up. Because if I'm the Raiders, I'm holding this process up until I get a fair deal. A 6th-round pick is not going to do it. When Steph Diggs went for a second, or something equivalent of second, if that means, a third or fourth or fifth, whatever it is to make those points work. But there's no need, just because Devontae didn't want to be there, that's not helping the Raiders one way or the other. And the trade's not helping them this year. So they're going to figure out and win games or lose games without Devontae Adams. But they don't need to be in a hurry to trade him just because he wants to be traded. He doesn't want his career to end like this. But if the Jets end up overpaying, because they didn't have to pay much for Rodgers in terms of compensation, certainly not what the Broncos gave up for Russell Wilson, or what they were willing to give up for Rodgers a year prior. If they go get Devontae Adams in New York, then you'll know that Rodgers is not only in this year, but also probably for another year. They'll have to totally rework his deal because of how uncapped friendly it is. But I don't think they're that far off talent-wise. Their defense is really good at all 3 levels, okay? Their running back situation with Breece Hall, and I'm drawing a blank on the other kid's name, but he's a solid 1-2 punch.
Or Braylon.
Braylon
Hall. Braylon Hall. Right. So you have Breece Hall and Braylon.
It's not Braylon Hall.
Hill?
I don't think it's
Braylon something.
Hall.
Braylon Edwards? Not Braylon Edwards. But you've got a good little backfield, and you've got Garrett Wilson, who is a top 15 kind of talent at wideout. So, and you got Conklin, who's a solid tight end, and their old line's okay.
So you're saying this is a good team?
I'm saying this is a better team. They're not as far away as you think talent wise.
Yeah, but they're not going to be able to do shit with a diva quarterback. That's I think as long as Aaron Rodgers is there, they're not winning a Super Bowl. That's how I feel.
Yeah, I think post-COVID, Aaron Rodgers got a little nutty. Like it got a little off the rails with him. He won the MVP that year. There was no fans in the stands. That was like his high watermark. He had his best year of his life. And then he started I'm not going to get too political with this, but he became smarter than everyone else. He became smarter than everyone else, like a lot of people we know during that time who spent a lot of time researching on the internet and found some research papers that some of these doctors might have overlooked. And so I understand, having control over your body and doing what you think is right for your own health. But you're also in the NFL where this is this big machine and they're going to create rules and you play by these rules. I didn't like the rules I had to play by in the NFL. Shoot, now I'm a uniform inspector. So I'm one of those asshole cops who's telling these guys they can't do this, they can't do that, they got to do this, they got to do that. But it's sort of what you have to do if you want to play in the NFL. Now, I'm not going to go into the efficacy of the shot and all that, but Aaron Rodgers, clearly something changed in him during that time, and he became a villain in the NFL. He became a villain, an adversary to the media, someone who thinks that everyone else out to get him. The legacy media was the enemy to him, and so he started doing stuff with Pat McAfee and people that he found friendly, became very adversarial with the media and narratives around him. And I think ever since that happened, his play has declined, and here we are now with Aaron Rodgers basically getting his coach fired.
And so it's going to be incumbent on him to get it figured out with Nathaniel Hackett, with Todd Downing, the pass game coordinator, and with that offense. And Ulbrich now has to coach the team and still run the defense unless he's going to share some of those responsibilities.
Don't break a Bay Area guy. I know him. We were on the 49ers together back in 2002, 2003. He was a really good linebacker, very instinctive, very intuitive guy. Had some pretty severe injuries that ended his career, but he's been at this for a while. And this defense has been good for a while. I think they probably have his respect. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes in there and does a pretty good job.
Well, and that's what Woody Johnson basically said in his, because he did meet the media, and he said that he thinks the bounce back, the enthusiasm of just a new voice, whomever that voice is, in this case, it's Ulbrich, and that unit has been really good because Saleh hasn't been calling the defense. That's where it gets tricky. And a lot of times you don't see where the head coach, even if they come from the defensive side of the ball, is calling the defense. They're weighing in.
Right.
But as John Fox explained it to me one time, it's too hard for the defensive coach to control the tempo as the play caller also. And you want to be able to have as many conversations with your offensive coaches as you need to. That's why a lot of times an interim coach might be a special teams coordinator, because then it doesn't mess up any of your operations.
You got to be watching the game as a head coach.
Yeah.
You have to watch
the
game and be involved in the clock management and who's not playing well in the situationally. You got to know when to punt, when to fake. You got to know when a guy's, and if you're like looking at your play sheet and trying to think of all that, you're not paying attention to your guys.
But then, to Foxy's point, the defensive coach is still worrying about all that stuff, but isn't paying attention to the tempo of the game. Whereas if you're the offensive play caller, you're in control of that and can dictate the speed at which the offense is operating. So that's why we just haven't seen in general too many defensive-minded coaches. I say defensive-minded, defensive background coaches still calling the defense, unless it's, I had to fire my defensive coordinator, so now I'm going to, like Wade Phillips.
Vic Fangio.
Vic Fangio was one that did.
Yeah.
And that didn't go great.
Didn't go great. All right, let's move off the Jets. Let's move on to our Denver freaking Broncos. Liv, I'm still learning how to do, because you see it so seamlessly go back and forth between the two cameras, and you kind of know, and I'm just trying to work on this, and it's like,
I'm trying not to crawl underneath anything.
Yeah, it's not as easy.
Yeah, BK, no crawling this time. No, Nate, you're crushing it. You're doing it. I have to tell you, I get so many compliments on this show about our dynamic and the chemistry that we all have and the fun that we all have. And I get told very often by a lot of people, Nate, you are really great at the whole broadcasting thing. So you got to give yourself a little more credit, because you're crushing it.
I'm not just a dumb jock after all.
No, you're not.
Thank you.
I mean, maybe some days, but not on Mondays, Fridays, and Wednesdays at 11 a.m.
All right, good.
Do we want to get into the matchup, or at least give a quick hat tip? This is the least surprising honor of the week, but guess who was named Defensive Player of the Week in the AFC?
Riley Moss.
Let me guess, the person that you called, BK.
Not Riley Moss. I did predict PS2.
There you go.
Not a bold prediction. Not a bold prediction.
Oh, after the game, not before the game.
Not before the game. Once he had the second interception, which was a heck of a play too, you're like, and it was obvious the Broncos were going to win that game. He's going to be Defensive Player of the Week. He is one of 8 players that has been named Defensive Player of the Week multiple times in his career in the last 8 years, joining guys like Max Crosby and Myles Garrett, among others. And the first Broncos defensive player since a year ago when Justin Simmons did it after the Chiefs win, November 3rd, so less than a year. And Draymond Jones was the previous one before that. Draymond actually won it a couple times, or was honored a couple times. I guess you don't really win it. But if you want to be Defensive Player of the Year, and the last corner to be Defensive Player of the Year, I believe, is Stephon Gilmore, you need to win some Defensive Players of the Week, or Defensive Player of the Month. And it's a long time from now, but Pat is certainly in a short conversation.
People are talking about him as perhaps the best player in the league right now. And there's also, if you pay attention to local media, Denver conversations and narratives, there's some people who are still dying on the hill that they should have taken Justin Fields or
I tried to have this conversation in the press box. And it's like,
but one of the things I heard that guy talking about yesterday was that anybody could have made that play that PS2. Any corner in the league could have made that. He was just in the position and he caught and he did. Anyone could have done it, Liv. What do you think about that?
I think that's a bunch of garbage. Who said that? Do we know who said that?
Yes, we know who said that.
Yeah,
our pal D-Mac.
Yeah, our buddy D-Mac.
Oh, come on, D-Mac. That's crazy work. That's crazy work.
He's still, the hill he's dying on is that they got it wrong by drafting Pat. Not that after the fact, he's clearly a better player than what we think Justin Fields is and what we know Mac Jones is or is not. But they still, at the time, should have drafted a quarterback 9th.
Justin Fields. It was Justin Fields. And it was at 10. And they
or 10, I'm sorry.
Should have gone with Justin Fields. And I asked him that even yesterday. Would you rather have Justin Fields or Pastor 10 right now? He said Justin Fields because he's a quarterback and the quarterback's value is more. I'm like, dude.
A good quarterback's value is, but once we know their value, it's like, would you rather buy a brand new Mercedes or a brand new Ferrari? Okay. But 3 years in, one is just running way better and the other one can barely move. So while the one might have had, let's say the Ferrari just has engine troubles and bad wheels and whatever. And okay, the Mercedes was less money. But the Mercedes is running and it's running. And the Ferrari's sitting. Sometimes it looks awesome and it runs great. And other times it's just sitting there apart because it doesn't work. So what you should have done is, that's a different argument, but we can do that with every draft every year, just about. They should have traded up in front of Kansas City and drafted Patrick Mahomes. If we're going to play that stupid game.
Right.
Right.
Or
We
even the
can't
players
do
that were
the shoulda,
available.
coulda, wouldas. That's, yeah.
Right. The players that were available to them that they didn't draft. You could say that the only draft that they nailed with the best player in the draft was in 2011. Well, I guess trading for John Elway. But in 2011, drafting Von Miller 2 after who went one? Oh, I'm drawing a blank on who went one. The pass rusher to Houston. Mario Williams went one, right?
Okay.
Drafting Vaughn 2. Oh no, Cam went one. Drafting Vaughn 2.
Who went 3, 4, 5? Let's do the whole draft.
Well, there's a bunch of Hall of Famers in that draft. Patrick Peterson's in that draft.
Just kidding.
No,
I'm
but
kidding,
J.J.
Brad. I'm
Watt-
kidding. I don't want you to do it.
JJ Watt.
I know you can't. I don't want you to.
Would you rather have JJ Watt?
I
or
would
Von
rather
Miller?
you not keep listing names. Let's
Let's talk about the Broncos. Look, I spent a lot of time around
Well,
Russell
to your-
Wilson. I like to list names.
To your guys' point about the whole Justin Field, whatever. I think that you can play shoulda, coulda, wouldas for any situation on any team with any player, whatever. But let's also not forget Justin Fields looked like a very different quarterback last season. He's now under Mike Tomlin, who I would argue is one of the best coaches in the league. Like
No
there's
argument.
a lot of other factors that have to go into having a quarterback that actually works for your franchise. I don't know if we would have had the same result with Justin Fields in Denver. So that's like where you can't really go down that path of what we should have done. I mean, without PS2, I'm not sure our defense is as solid as they are. So, defense wins
Absolutely.
championships. You need to have a good defense, and the Broncos have that.
I agree. Whenever you get a chance to, a guy you draft ends up being considered or even talked about as the best in the league
Come
at
on.
football. How could you go back on that and think you did it wrong? This guy is the cream of the crop right now. Every best receiver in the league says he's the best corner, the hardest guy to get open against. He's physical, he's fast, he's tough, he's professional, he doesn't cause any drama. He's always trying to get better. He's the rising tide that lifts all boats, and this defense is playing as top 3 defense, and Pat Surtain is a big reason why. All right, let's move on to the opponent, the San Diego. No, they're not in San Diego. They're in Los Angeles playing at SoFi, another one of these brand new stadiums that doesn't have a home field advantage because it's just like a freaking Disneyland, and a bunch of people come from out of town to go to these games. The Chargers played the Niners recently at home, and it was the Niners fans call that Levi South, because they just go down south and they have a home game there against the Rams. The Rams are coming here, though, in Power Field. Broncos on a 3-game winning streak. Liv, what are your thoughts going into this game generally? And I'll tell you that before you answer, Justin Herbert, it looks like he's going to be playing, or he's back at practice with a high ankle sprain. We'll see how that goes, but they'll be at full strength. They're 2-2 right now. Jim Harbaugh's coaching this team. Is it going to be the same old Chargers, Liv, or are we going to see something new from this team?
To be completely honest with you, the Chargers have surprised me early in this season so far. I did not expect them to click the way that they have. I did not expect Harbaugh to have success with them right away. And we've seen them have some pretty competitive games. They put up a really great fight against the Chiefs. I took them to cover. They still lost by a touchdown, but nonetheless, that game did go back and forth quite a bit from an offensive perspective. I do think our defense, again, it sucks that I keep having to go to the fact that our defense pretty much has to be perfect, because I don't know what our offense is going to bring from week to week. We're not there just yet. I feel more confident every week, but still not like, okay, we can do this. So our defense is going to be huge. And I think that, if I were a Justin Herbert with a high ankle sprain, I wouldn't want to go against this defense in this upcoming week. I do think it helps that I believe the Broncos have home field advantage in this one. And there was no better, to me, momentum that they could have gotten going into this game than what they just did against the Raiders. That was like the perfect recipe for them to build off of that momentum and continue it against another divisional game. And again, with these divisional games, to me, anyone in the division is a rival. I know that with the Raiders, it's a little bit more deep rooted, but to me, any of these games in the division are rivalries, and you can never count out a team. But again, I think that the Broncos are kind of in more of a position to prove themselves in this rivalry, in this division matchup. And I think that will bode very well for them. So I'm feeling good about the Broncos, just given the fact that the Chargers, I think, they've done well in the first 5 weeks so far. Bye weeks, I would love to know from you, Nate. Do you feel like bye weeks help or hurt? Because I feel like you could make a case for both, but personally,
And this is early too, but like you mentioned, their best players. Banged up.
They're able to get Justin Herbert back, so that's a beneficial bye week. An early bye though, you don't want to have your bye after 4 weeks. You want it in the middle of the season, maybe after 8 or 9, so you can kind of split it up, maybe even 9 or 10, so you can have this home stretch. Broncos have it really late.
They have the last one, I think.
Yeah, which is also late. What you don't want, but typically the best coaches are really good after bye weeks. Jim Harbaugh, you got to think, is going to be one of those coaches who's good after a bye week. Although Jim Harbaugh is not your ultra game planner, genius guy who's coming up with schemes to beat the opposite team. He's not that guy. He's more of a motivator, overseer, energy guy. Andy Reid famously is like one of the best ever after a bye week, just because he's so smart about game planning and resting his guys and preparing them for the next week. And so it really actually it's going to be, time will tell if Jim Harbaugh is that guy who's great out of a bye week. I'm sure there's stats to talk about Jim Harbaugh's 4 years in the NFL as a head coach and how he did coming out of a bye week.
They just won a lot of games. So
they won a lot of games. Yeah. So you got to think that they'll be ready for this game. When I played for the Broncos, the Chargers were a rival. I mean, this was not like, oh, we're just rivals with the Raiders. I would almost say that we had more bad blood with the Chargers than we did with the Raiders at that time, because there was this rivalry between like Jay Cutler and Phillip Rivers.
Rivers and the Broncos fans.
Yeah, and so the Chargers were always good too, and the Raiders weren't. And so we were always kind of neck and neck with the Chargers with who was going to win that division. There's the Marty Schottenheimer. Marty Schottenheimer went 14-2 and got fired. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I think that might have been the late A.J. Smith's worst move.
Yeah, and the LaDainian Tomlinson years in San Diego, and Drew Brees was there before he went to New Orleans, and famously Phillip Rivers took over for Drew Brees and had quite a career, maybe even a Hall of Fame career, probably. So, BK, I want to ask you though about this matchup and the Chargers defense, because. Oh, did you have something? No, go ahead.
No, I want the data to show it. I didn't realize the Chargers defense is playing this well. Every week the Broncos send out a game release and give you like 20 pages of notes, history on the rivalry and who's doing well for the home team, the game notes. Pat Surtain's doing this and whatever coach is doing this, but it gives you a breakdown where you don't have to go find it, and they send it in color. So Jay, if you can throw the slide up, red means you're not in the top 10. Blue, in this case, because this is the Broncos that put it out, blue means you're kind of in the middle, and green, you're obviously in really good shape. So I expected the Broncos to be in all green, and I was actually looking at some of those numbers the other day, where they are sack-wise and where they are in terms of the pressure and all these different things. They're top 5, if not top 2 or 3 in just about everything. I did not realize how good the Chargers defense, led by Jesse Minter as their coordinator. They're 5th in points per game. You see they're first in points per game, 5th in points per play. They're 8th in interceptions, so they're getting their hands on the football. They're not really sacking the quarterback, and part of that's been Bosa's been banged up, as usual. They're not really good on third down. The Broncos' third down numbers went down against the Raiders, but that's the only thing that went down. They're great everywhere else. But I just didn't realize how good the Chargers defense is. But then when you look up at their offense, led by, I get that he's been banged up really since training camp, led by Justin Herbert, they're not trying to do too much with Greg Roman. They've got J.K. Dobbins, they got Gus Edwards, they got some other backs. They've got some talent at the wideout spots, but they're not really throwing the ball. Lad McConkey, they got out of Georgia, the Johnston kid, first rounder. So this is kind of similar to the Jets game, except you don't have a future Hall of Fame quarterback. You just have a really talented one. You don't have two offenses that are lighting the world on fire. They're trying to create their identity and run the football. But you have two defenses that are getting after it. I just didn't realize this Chargers D was this good in so many areas, specifically in the points per game. They held the Chiefs to 17, 20, whatever that was. And we know the Chiefs are capable of scoring more than they have. The Broncos special teams, though, if you scroll all the way down or just look down at the bottom, that Broncos special teams is green in a lot of areas too. Basically, you want to be in green as much as possible. And Broncos have work to do on offense, more blue than red this week. And that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But still a ways to go.
So far, the Chargers have played the Raiders, beat them 22-10. They've played the Panthers, beat them 26-3.
With Bryce Young.
Yeah. Those are their two victories. Lost to the Steelers, 20-10. Similar kind of score to the Broncos, lost to the Steelers. and they also lost to the Chiefs 17-10.
So 17 to the Chiefs. But this is setting up the Broncos have played these types of games.
Yes,
Broncos are poised for this matchup.
Yeah. So, but pretty impressive to hold an NFL, your NFL opponents to 12.5 points per game. But Liv, how are you feeling about the Broncos offense kind of going into this game, especially after the momentum that they were able to gain in the second half against the Raiders, the couple touchdown drives that Bo's able to lead them on, the little Ferris Bueller moment with Sean Payton, all right? And then him responding with a couple touchdowns, and the Broncos could have run up the score even more, ended up scoring 34 on the Raiders. Do you think that momentum's going to carry over against this stellar Chargers defense?
Yeah, I do. I think it's going to be tougher for sure. But I do think I picture this being a very low scoring affair. Like I really, really do. The fact that the Chargers in their losses were held to 10 points. To me, we have a defense that's capable of doing the same. So it is going to be very crucial. Like we talked about on the last show, you cannot rely on a Pat Surtain pick 6 to get you back into a game. So from the very beginning, our defense is, of course, I would assume going to play the same way that they have been throughout the year or this season. And I think it's going to be very low scoring. I think it's going to end up, honestly, going down to the wire in terms of kind of like, I think it's going to be eerily similar to the Jets game. I really do, where it's like a missed field goal or, or a missed extra point or a field goal that's what the line is actually set at right now.
That's what I was going to ask you about.
3-point spread. So
that's what I was going to ask you, Liv. It opened with the Broncos, even after what they did and the Chargers on a bye.
Underdogs, right?
Broncos opened at 1.5. It has now dropped to the Broncos despite playing the way they've played the last 3 games. They are a field goal underdog at home. I'll be curious to see where the sharp money in Vegas comes down, because do they have that wrong? Do the odds makers have that wrong? And do you like a home underdog in what we think will be a low scoring game, who's obviously on this hot streak, unlike the Chargers? I get they got the week off. The total. Do you want to guess the total with 2 teams that are averaging what they're?
I'm seeing right here at 35 and 35 and a half.
Yeah, I have no problem. I'm not going to bet either way, but I will not be surprised if the under certainly hits. I didn't have time to do the math. Had the Broncos not given up that late touchdown to the Raiders, it didn't mean anything, because as we're going through all that, you look over, the Broncos are second in points allowed at 14 and 14.6. So both are really stellar numbers. But would the Broncos be ahead if they would have held them to 10 points instead of, or I don't know math well enough? They might have
not
been
quite,
tied,
but they would have been pretty close.
Like so, and look, you only count what happens. So to this point, they're
right.
Yeah, you
so
are
if
what
the
you
Chargers
are. So.
hadn't given up that, or had, it might be different.
Right,
too.
had Mahomes scored 1 more touchdown.
Right.
So, but 2 obviously stellar defenses. Yeah, the under feels like a safer bet. Weather's not going to come into play.
However, the Chargers are not going to end the season holding their opponents at 12.5 points. This seems like a beginning of the season type of thing. Maybe you get a couple opponents that weren't very good.
Yeah,
maybe
you got Bryce Young bench, basically.
Exactly. You got the Raiders, who aren't very dynamic. And then also the beginning of the NFL season, there's just not as many points being scored. The offense are still trying to gain their footing. You got young quarterbacks. You got new systems. You got not a lot of preseason time. You got fewer practice days, no double days in training camp. The offenses are going to come out a little slow, and as the season goes on, they're going to score more points. That's how I view it. And so I would actually go with the over on this one. I think the Broncos have that taste in their mouth where they're going to put up more points and they're going to keep the momentum rolling from last week. And I think the Chargers, are always going to be game. Your divisional opponents are always going to be ready for a fight, as we saw from the Raiders in the opening drive, right? Brock Bowers goes down and scores this touchdown. I was like, oh, shit, they're not just going to lay down. We're going to have to score points as well. And it didn't look good for the first quarter with the Broncos, first quarter and a half, until that Pat Surtain play turned it all around. So the Broncos might need some stuff like that to happen. I'm not saying another 100-yard return, but some big plays on defense, some turnovers, and maybe a big special teams player too. I mean, we saw Marvin Mims with that 45, 50-yard return. How about Marvin Mims takes one to the house? A little house call for Marvin. What do you say, Liv?
I would love it. And also, I want to throw in there that the Broncos, obviously with a record of 3-2, are a surprising 4-1 against the spread this year so far. So they are covering spreads. I think it's because there's been so many question marks around this team. Vegas probably doesn't even know where to set lines with the Denver Broncos, which is fair because I don't even know if Broncos fans know where they would set the line for this Broncos team. But they have done very well at covering. The Chargers are at 50 right now. They're at 2-2. Obviously, they had a bye week, so we didn't get that 5th game from them. But they're right at 50% in terms of covering the spread, and the Broncos an impressive 4-1. So something to keep in mind if you're planning on taking them to cover. I don't like the number 3 as a better. I will just tell you, you are looking at a push more times than not. If this were to go to 3.5, I would love it. But 3 is kind of one of those tricky numbers in the world of betting that I don't super love. But like I said, 4-1 against the spread. So do with that what you will, but they're covering very well.
Well, I think probably some of the Vegas reluctance is about this offense and Bo Nix and him still trying to find his footing and prove that he can be that guy, that every week guy. Time will tell. And then, BK, anything else to add to this conversation?
Well, I'm just curious, and I was thinking about it, because we talked about last week, would style points matter? How the Broncos, if they would have eked out a 12-10 win or a 13-10 win over the Raiders, you said, the Raiders are down and this is the best the Broncos can do. They scored 34 points and are still, as you just Google power rankings and Broncos. One headline said Bleacher Report has Broncos hilariously low. NFL.com's rankings, I'm just kind of flipping through these, and the Broncos actually on their website will do a roundup of rankings. If they don't do it today, it'll probably be out later today or tomorrow. They have them 14th right now. The Broncos are 5th in the
Power
AFC,
ranking?
14th in the power rankings.
Yep.
Broncos are 5th in the AFC playoff picture, first wild card. And so it might have changed some people's minds, clearly, because these power rankings are different. With a decisive win, with just a win over the Chargers, if it's ugly, fine. But if they now, for a 4th straight week, find a way to win a game and Bo Nix continues to just play well enough, will that, I guess, instill confidence that, hey, this is a playoff team? They're similar, despite having an offensive-minded coach and not a defensive-minded coach, an offensive play caller. Still kind of similar to the Steelers. They're going to play really good defense. They're not going to beat themselves because their quarterback isn't going to turn the ball over, but they're not going to go out and they're not going to play a 36-30 game with the Falcons the way the Bucs did. How will perception change based on the outcome of this game? I guess one way or another, win, loss, or blowout, win, blowout, loss.
Well, either way you look at it, in my opinion, this respect the Broncos are getting solely based on their defense. The offensive number is still pretty woeful, not scoring a ton of points. Bottom 5 in passing, bottom 10 or 11 in running the ball. Sean Payton and his offense need to come along, and this Broncos defense thus far keeping them afloat, keeping them in games, and really the toast of the league, or at least one of these top defenses in the league. We're going to get back here on Friday and keep talking about this stuff. Liv, are you going to be in studio on Friday?
No, none of us are going to be in studio on Friday, but
that's right.
She has plans.
Yeah,
you're
I
out of
have
here.
I'm in a wedding this Saturday, so I am like pretty much in the wedding party shackles Friday and Saturday. So I will not
Mazel
be here Friday.
tov to your friend who's getting married. Hope it goes amazingly.
Where's
It'll
the
be
wedding?
great.
Where is it happening?
It's in where is it? It's up north somewhere.
Canada?
We want to crash it.
Yeah.
So,
BK is going to show up.
Nate and I are
Yeah.
they're going to
It's
show
up
up. I will
north.
say-
So
No,
yeah, I
I
don't
will
know.
say
I was even trying to find a way of maybe like, depending how far it is from Boulder, maybe I could go to the CU Kansas State game because my sister's driving out for that with her roommate because she goes to Kansas State. But I think I'm going to be pretty much tied down with all things wedding festivities until the wee hours of the morning and super late at night. But we will have a Sunday post-game live that I plan on driving down to the studio for and hopefully celebrating a Broncos win against another division team. So we'll see.
That'll be good. And we can end on this because a few weeks back we did a photo shoot. I think you've seen some of those photos. I commented on how Nate did not look as tall as he should compared to you and I. But as I was going through those photos, I was getting stuff together for some credential stuff. I had Liv's photos up and my daughter Scarlett, who's going to be 4 on Friday, she goes, "Her so pretty." And I go, "Liv?" She goes, "Yeah, Liv." And I
I
said,
love her.
yeah, it's a nice photo. And she's not wearing her pajamas, so even
Okay,
better.
here we go. Here we go with the freaking pajamas. No,
But there
actually,
you go.
one of my favorite little moments was from your son when we were joking about how I don't know any of the references you guys make, and I was like, yeah, I apparently I live under a rock, and he goes, you don't live under a rock. I've been to your house. I was like, you're so cute. Kids are so just matter of fact, and I absolutely love them for that. So yeah, your kids are awesome. I'll
Well, we
babysit
love you for
whenever.
joining us from home on a day when you're pretty busy and not planning to do this. So thanks for joining us, Liv. And thank
course.
you guys out there for joining us. This has been another episode of Off Field. I'm Nate Jackson. He's Brandon Krisztal. She's Liv Moods. We'll see you guys on Friday.
See ya.
Later.